Today, horror games are bigger than ever. Every day, dozens of new indie horror projects show up online. Some go all in on jump scares, some focus on atmosphere, and others just try to leave you with that weird, uncomfortable feeling you can't really explain. And because of sites like Itch.io, literally anyone can upload their games and hope it blows up. The problem is, most of these games disappear almost immediately. A few get popular for like a week because of memes or TikToks, and then people completely forget about them. And some games are so buried under everything else that you've probably never even heard of them at all. Maybe you saw a screenshot somewhere, maybe someone mentioned the title once, but you never actually sat down and watched the whole thing. So today, I wanted to talk about 3 horror games that genuinely stuck with me. Not because they're full of loud monsters screaming in your face every 5 seconds, but because they create this really weird, uncomfortable feeling that stays with you afterwards. Like the kind of games where you finish playing and immediately feel like making tea and staring at the wall for at least 10 minutes. Anyway, let's get into it. We'll start with something a little more well-known. This game is called Crawl. And honestly, if you're even slightly claustrophobic, this game is already terrifying. You play as this guy crawling through an insanely tight cave system. Later on, we find out he's actually a journalist trying to find out what happened down there. And the entire game feels oppressive. You barely have any equipment, just a flashlight, a camera, and a map. That's it. And even the flashlight is stressful because it constantly dies. And every time you recharge it, it makes this awful screeching sound that makes you feel like it's cutting straight through your skull. Most of the game is literally just crawling through tiny tunnels that look way too small for a human being. And slowly, you start finding things, like a backpack with explosives nearby, or human bodies. But the thing that makes this game really scary is the way it handles visibility. Most of the time, you can't actually see what's behind you. The only way to look backwards is by checking your map or recharging the flashlight, because your character rolls onto his back while he's doing it. And after a while, every single time you turn around, you start expecting something to be there. And eventually, there is. There's this creature following you through the cave system, and judging by all the bodies lying around, it definitely killed everybody else trapped down there. The only thing keeping it away is your camera. The ending is honestly kind of depressing too. After everything, the cave gets sealed permanently and our protagonist is never found. The worst part is that nobody even realizes he's still inside. He's just trapped underground forever in complete darkness. And honestly, that idea alone is scarier than most horror games. The second game is called Leftovers. This one starts off feeling almost normal. You play as a kid and your mother tells you to go deliver food to the neighbors. Simple enough, but immediately something feels wrong. There's way too much food, and your mom gives you one very specific rule. Don't come back until every container is gone. Also, your character can't talk. The only thing you can do is nod yes or shake your head no. So you go from apartment to apartment meeting all these neighbors, and every single one feels like a completely different type of nightmare. There's an old woman who honestly feels like the most normal person in the entire building. Then there's this creepy nerd guy who suddenly becomes weirdly friendly after realizing you smell like your mother. There's an old man who literally kills you if you answer his questions wrong. And there's this woman who acts so disturbingly towards the child that when your character leaves her apartment, they come out crying. The game never directly explains what happened in there. It doesn't need to. That somehow makes it worse. Eventually, you meet this kind young woman downstairs who decides to actually open one of the food containers, and then she starts screaming. Because inside the containers are eyeballs, human remains. And then suddenly, the title makes sense. The leftovers were never food leftovers. You still have one final container left, and the last resident turns out to be your father's mistress. She calls our mother to brag about how lucky our father was to have her, and during the conversation, she realizes that the remains inside of the container belong to him. Yeah, our mother found out her husband was cheating on her, and completely snapped. The mistress grabs a knife and attacks you. You run back upstairs to your mother, and your mother protects you with another knife. What makes this game disturbing is that there are no monsters here. It's just people. Everybody in that building feels rotten in some way, and by the end, you realize your own mother belongs there too. It's not really scary in the traditional horror game way, it just feels deeply uncomfortable. And finally, the last game.
Welcome to Kitty Kart 64!
This game is honestly difficult to explain. At first, it looks completely harmless. Bright colors, cute little kart racer, feels almost nostalgic. But then you notice something weird. The laps never count. You can drive around forever and the game refuses to progress. And eventually, you realize that the game wants you to leave the track entirely. The second you drive off the road, everything changes. Suddenly, there's this giant hidden world outside the map with weird sheep drawings everywhere and huge empty spaces that feel strangely wrong. Then you fall into the void. And from there, the game basically turns into a fever dream. Every area feels disconnected from reality. There's a swamp where you slowly sink into the mud while a little girl tells you she hates you. A desert with glitching textures and a rabbit that suddenly says it can finally feel emotions. A colorful area full of black, faceless figures twitching on the ground. Then there's this horrible balloon section where children laugh while you pop balloons, except eventually blood starts pouring out of them instead. At one point, a mouse says she doesn't want to wake up anymore, then her head explodes. The game just keeps getting darker and stranger the longer it goes on. Eventually, you end up driving along this flooded nighttime road while water slowly rises around you. There's this glitched cat sitting nearby fishing, but it talks in broken, corrupted sounds you can't even understand. Then, eventually, you reach this empty parking lot where arrows guide you toward the finish line. And while driving there, you notice bloody teeth on the ground. At first, they seem random. Later, you realize they were warning you, because right before the finish line, spikes suddenly puncture our tires. And out of the darkness comes this tall, distorted figure with impossibly long limbs. It slowly walks towards you, and then brutally beats you to death. The screen flashes with images of teeth being knocked out, the exact same teeth you saw earlier. And the game just says, "Congratulations!" That's it. Your body is lying there motionless while the game congratulates you. Nobody fully agrees on what this game is actually about. A lot of people think it represents guilt after a car accident or some kind of trauma involving children, but the game never confirms anything. And honestly, I think that uncertainty is what makes it so memorable. It feels like a nightmare that almost makes sense, but never fully does. Anyway, that's it for today's video. I wanted to focus on horror games that rely more on atmosphere and psychological discomfort instead of constant jump scares. So, if you enjoyed this kind of video, feel free to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Bye!